Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei activated Juggernaut Drive. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. He woke with no memory and a vague sense of being useful to something called Is, as if others had decided who he would be. His life had always seemed touched by bad luck and strange turns. He remembered a childhood friend and the news report of that friend piloting an infinite Stratos, and the idea struck him that one day he might be able to pilot one too. A knock sounded at the door. Issei asked who it was and why they were there so late. Shifuyu insisted that he open the door and revealed herself as an old childhood friend. Issei recognized her name with surprise. Shifuyu teased him about his terrible memory. Issei admitted he only remembered bits and asked her to come in. They talked about many things. When his memories began to surface, the moment was painful, but Shifuyu had something important to tell him. She told Issei that he was enrolled at the IS Academy and that he would have to come with her. When he hesitated, she insisted that he would attend, making clear she intended to make sure he went one way or another. Faced with her determination, Issei agreed to go willingly. Shifuyu told him to prepare his things because they would leave in the morning. That night they stayed up talking and getting his affairs in order. The next morning, Shifuyu led Issei to the IS Academy. She welcomed him to the school and announced that she would train him herself. Issei asked if she was serious. Shifuyu grew slightly embarrassed and confirmed that she would train him and try to give him advantages. She explained those advantages. He would be exempt from some classes, would not have to share a dormitory, would have a private room, and she would arrange for Shinanono Tabane to look after his first IS. Issei then revealed that he already had an IS. Shifuyu was astonished. Issei explained that he had commissioned a well-made IS from a reputable factory and that his model was of a particularly high grade. Shifuyu felt guilty that she had not helped him obtain it and reacted with visible disappointment in herself. Issei reassured her that nothing bad would happen and lightened the mood by suggesting they go eat. They went to the rooftop to eat with the other students. While they were eating, Shifuyu asked Issei whether he still hated her for what had happened in the past. The atmosphere grew tense. Issei said that he did not hate her, he simply wanted to forget that painful day so he would not hurt anyone else, especially her. Hearing this, Shifuyu embraced him and began to cry. She apologized for not saving him and for only being able to save Ichika. She confessed that she had felt guilty ever since. She promised that from now on she would protect him no matter what and that she would never leave him. Issei watched her, moved by her resolve. Issei accepted her apology and urged her not to let guilt consume her, encouraging her to move forward. Shifuyu agreed and said she had some things to give him. She handed over what he needed along with keys to his new room. When Issei entered his room later, he was surprised to find someone already there. Who was in the room and what would happen next remained uncertain. In Issei's room, Issei protested that of all the rooms it had to be Shinono Tabane's. Tabane welcomed Issei and told him to make himself comfortable because this would be their room. Issei accused Shifuyu of tricking him. Tabane took his hand and led him to the table where a bowl of ramen awaited. Both of them ate until they were satisfied. Tabane asked Issei if he had liked the food, and Issei replied that he had. Tabane then asked if Issei still did not have an IS. Issei said that he already had one. Tabane retreated to a corner, looking downcast, and blamed herself for not having made an IS for Issei. Issei reassured Tabane that if she wanted, she could modify his IS. Tabane brightened at the offer and jumped for joy, saying she would equip it with all kinds of weapons and tools, cannons, pistols, swords, even a chainsaw. Issei asked why a chainsaw, and Tabane answered that it would be useful for cutting through obstacles or wood. Issei hoped she would not destroy it. Tabane drifted into thought. Issei announced that he would go take a shower. Tabane said okay. After showering, Issei went to bed and fell asleep so Tabane could continue her work. In another place, in Shifuyu's room, Shifuyu looked at the moon and remembered what Issei had told him. He did not hate him and that he had done the right thing. Shifuyu wished he only knew what had happened. He went to bed and fell asleep. A shadow appeared and told Shifuyu that if he wanted to know what had happened to hide Issei, it would be shown to him in his dreams. The shadow released a beam that hit Shifuyu and left him in a very deep sleep. In Shifuyu's dream, he saw a brown-haired young man beneath a burning house. Shifuyu called for Issei to get out, but Issei did not respond. Shifuyu rushed forward, but the scene shifted as flames and smoke engulfed the area and Issei vanished from sight. A voice whispered that Issei's life had never been easy. The dream then placed Shifuyu inside a research facility. A doctor reported that the boy had suffered severe injuries and multiple fractures and that no family had come to claim him. A scientist, assured that no one was looking for the boy, declared it time for testing. Shifuyu begged them not to hurt him, but he could only watch as they ran one procedure after another, pushing him until he was barely holding on. The scene was terrifying for Shifuyu. The whisper returned and showed how Issei managed to escape. Shifuyu found himself standing beside a roadside. A mysterious man told him that although Issei had been effectively lost, he was now free, and the man drove away at high speed. A family nearby discovered the injured boy, and the father, seeing that he was still alive, took him to a hospital. There he was treated and rehabilitated. He spent time in a wheelchair, thin and nearly silent, but after 3 years he had learned to move again. Shifuyu realized that this was where he had first found him. Shifuyu woke with a start and apologized to Issei. He realized he had seen Issei's past. Noticing the time, he saw it was noon. Shifuyu vowed that from now on he would protect Issei. What Issei and Tabane will do next will be shown in the next episode of Issei in Infinite Stratos. End of chapter. Chapter 1. Issei thought today would be the day to modify his IS. When Tabane stepped out of the bathroom at the mention of her name, Issei reacted with an embarrassed, comical nosebleed. He woke with no memory and a vague sense of being useful to something called IS, as if others had decided who he would be. His life had always seemed touched by bad luck and strange turns. He remembered a childhood friend and the news report of that friend piloting an Infinite Stratos, and the idea struck him that one day he might be able to pilot one too. A knock sounded at the door. Issei asked who it was and why they were there so late. Shifuyu insisted that he open the door and revealed herself as an old childhood friend. Issei recognized her name with surprise. Shifuyu teased him about his terrible memory. Issei admitted he only remembered bits and asked her to come in. They talked about many things. When his memories began to surface, the moment was painful, but Shifuyu had something important to tell him. She told Issei that he was enrolled at the IS Academy and that he would have to come with her. When he hesitated, she insisted that he would attend, making clear she intended to make sure he went one way or another. Faced with her determination, Issei agreed to go willingly. Shifuyu told him to prepare his things because they would leave in the morning. That night they stayed up talking and getting his affairs in order. The next morning, Shifuyu led Issei to the IS Academy. She welcomed him to the school and announced that she would train him herself. Issei asked if she was serious. Shifuyu grew slightly embarrassed and confirmed that she would train him and try to give him advantages. She explained those advantages: he would be exempt from some classes, would not have to share a dormitory, would have a private room, and she would arrange for Shinanono Tabane to look after his first IS. Issei then revealed that he already had an IS. Shifuyu was astonished. Issei explained that he had commissioned a well-made IS from a reputable factory and that his model was of a particularly high grade. Shifuyu felt guilty that she had not helped him obtain it and reacted with visible disappointment in herself. Issei reassured her that nothing bad would happen and lightened the mood by suggesting they go eat. They went to the rooftop to eat with the other students. While they were eating, Shifuyu asked Issei whether he still hated her for what had happened in the past. The atmosphere grew tense. Issei said that he did not hate her, he simply wanted to forget that painful day so he would not hurt anyone else, especially her. Hearing this, Shifuyu embraced him and began to cry. She apologized for not saving him and for only being able to save Ichika. She confessed that she had felt guilty ever since. She promised that from now on she would protect him no matter what and that she would never leave him. Issei watched her, moved by her resolve. Issei accepted her apology and urged her not to let guilt consume her, encouraging her to move forward. Shifuyu agreed and said she had some things to give him. She handed over what he needed along with keys to his new room. When Issei entered his room later, he was surprised to find someone already there. Who was in the room and what would happen next remained uncertain. In Issei's room, Issei protested that of all the rooms it had to be Shinono Tabane's. Tabane welcomed Issei and told him to make himself comfortable because this would be their room. Issei accused Shifuyu of tricking him. Tabane took his hand and led him to the table where a bowl of ramen awaited. Both of them ate until they were satisfied. Tabane asked Issei if he had liked the food, and Issei replied that he had. Tabane then asked if Issei still did not have an IS. Issei said that he already had one. Tabane retreated to a corner, looking downcast, and blamed herself for not having made an IS for Issei. Issei reassured Tabane that if she wanted, she could modify his IS. Tabane brightened at the offer and jumped for joy, saying she would equip it with all kinds of weapons and tools: cannons, pistols, swords, even a chainsaw. Issei asked why a chainsaw, and Tabane answered that it would be useful for cutting through obstacles or wood. Issei hoped she would not destroy it. Tabane drifted into thought. Issei announced that he would go take a shower. Tabane said okay. After showering, Issei went to bed and fell asleep so Tabane could continue her work. In another place, in Shifuyu's room, Shifuyu looked at the moon and remembered what Issei had told him. He did not hate him and that he had done the right thing. Shifuyu wished he only knew what had happened. He went to bed and fell asleep. A shadow appeared and told Shifuyu that if he wanted to know what had happened to hide Issei, it would be shown to him in his dreams. The shadow released a beam that hit Shifuyu and left him in a very deep sleep. In Shifuyu's dream, he saw a brown-haired young man beneath a burning house. Shifuyu called for Issei to get out, but Issei did not respond. Shifuyu rushed forward, but the scene shifted as flames and smoke engulfed the area and Issei vanished from sight. A voice whispered that Issei's life had never been easy. The dream then placed Shifuyu inside a research facility. A doctor reported that the boy had suffered severe injuries and multiple fractures and that no family had come to claim him. A scientist, assured that no one was looking for the boy, declared it time for testing. Shifuyu begged them not to hurt him, but he could only watch as they ran one procedure after another, pushing him until he was barely holding on. The scene was terrifying for Shifuyu. The whisper returned and showed how Issei managed to escape. Shifuyu found himself standing beside a roadside. A mysterious man told him that although Issei had been effectively lost, he was now free, and the man drove away at high speed. A family nearby discovered the injured boy, and the father, seeing that he was still alive, took him to a hospital. There he was treated and rehabilitated. He spent time in a wheelchair, thin and nearly silent, but after 3 years he had learned to move again. Shifuyu realized that this was where he had first found him. Shifuyu woke with a start and apologized to Issei. He realized he had seen Issei's past. Noticing the time, he saw it was noon. Shifuyu vowed that from now on he would protect Issei. What Issei and Tabane will do next will be shown in the next episode of Issei in Infinite Stratos. End of chapter. Chapter 1. Issei thought today would be the day to modify his IS. When Tabane stepped out of the bathroom at the mention of her name, Issei reacted with an embarrassed, comical nosebleed. Typical of an overexcited otaku. Tabane teased that Issei was the pervert, and Issei replied that she was the pervert for coming out of the bathroom like that. Tabane asked what they would have for breakfast, and Issei asked what she wanted. Tabane answered pancakes and waffles. Issei marveled at how energetic she was. Tabane asked Issei to feed her, and he made waffles and pancakes for her. After breakfast they went to the workshop where Issei took out his IS and considered modifications. Issei suggested adding 2 swords. Tabane asked if he was good with swords, and Issei said he handled them easily. Tabane proposed installing targeted cannons as well, and Issei agreed that would be good. Tabane declared they would build the IS. They spent time repairing and modifying the IS to improve mobility and speed. Tabane drifted into her own thoughts, silently admitting to herself that she liked Issei and wondering whether she should tell him. While lost in thought, Tabane slipped and Issei instinctively caught her in a gentle, protective hold. Tabane stammered that she had slipped, Issei checked that she was okay and brushed it off as something that happened to everyone. They leaned close in an NTMT, charged moment, but before anything could happen the IS fell and crashed to the ground. Issei and Tabane hurried to stop it and finished installing the weapons. When everything was in place, the IS was ready. Meanwhile, Shifuyu sat at a desk worrying about a recurring nightmare and thinking through a strategy to keep Issei safe. Remembering when Issei had been confined to a wheelchair, Shifuyu resolved that it must not happen again and vowed to protect him. Shifuyu felt a flush of emotion at the thought. These feelings were tied to how much she cared for Issei. Back with Issei and Tabane, Tabane handed Issei a pair of impressive-looking gloves and explained that this style of training was unusual. Issei admired the gloves and noted that with the swords and cannons he would have a formidable IS. Only a power source remained. Tabane then asked what he would name his IS. After thinking for a moment, Issei chose the name Red Dragon Emperor. Tabane agreed that the name sounded epic, and they went to eat. A short, neutral moment bridged the scene. Chapter 2. Shifuyu searched frantically for Issei, determined not to lose him again. He wondered aloud where Issei could be and feared that he had left. After searching the school and beginning to cry at the thought that Issei was gone, Shifuyu saw Issei appear. Issei asked why Shifuyu was crying, and Shifuyu embraced him, relieved. Shifuyu admitted guilt for not being able to help and feeling like a failure. Issei reassured Shifuyu not to carry that heavy mood. Shifuyu then mentioned that someone had come looking for Issei and left a note. He handed the paper to Issei, who opened it and found a map marked with an X at the meeting place. Issei said he wanted to eat first, and Shifuyu agreed. They went to a buffet and ate until they were satisfied. 2 hours later, Issei followed the map to a park and wondered if this was the right place. A voice behind him expressed surprise that he had come, and Issei turned to see a girl with golden hair and beautiful eyes. Issei recognized her as Charlotte, and she greeted him warmly, remarking that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Issei complimented her, saying she had become very beautiful, which made Charlotte blush deeply. Charlotte reminded Issei of a promise they had made 3 years earlier. She asked if he remembered their pact, saying that if they met again they would become more than friends. She explained that the promise had been that he would become her boyfriend and, in time, her husband. Issei stood silent for a few moments, taken aback by the confession. Charlotte lowered her head, shy and hopeful, while Issei struggled to find his response. Issei took Charlotte's arm and turned her toward him. Issei promised that he would never break his promise and that he would be her husband. Charlotte asked if he was serious and not lying. Issei assured her that he would not lie to someone as lovely as she was. They shared a heartfelt, tender moment and then Issei invited Charlotte to his home. The two walked down the street beneath a beautiful rising moon, each wondering what the future might hold. On another day, Issei felt embarrassed and nervous because Charlotte had invited him to try on swimsuits. Issei admitted that he did not know how Charlotte had convinced him. Charlotte reminded him that they were going to the beach with Shifuyu and Tabane. Issei wondered why Shifuyu had planned the outing. In a recalled scene, Shifuyu had told the students that they would go on a beach excursion and that they should bring their best swimsuits. The students agreed. Back in the present, Charlotte told Issei that he also needed to buy a swimsuit. Issei hoped nothing bad would happen and confessed his anxious feeling that something might go wrong. Charlotte told him to relax and that everything would be fine. She took his arm and led him to the mall. In the swimsuit section, Issei noticed many different styles and felt increasingly uneasy. Charlotte was already in a fitting room trying on a swimsuit when Shifuyu and Tabane appeared nearby. Shifuyu and Tabane greeted Issei and asked him to say what he thought about their swimsuits. Tabane spoke playfully and asked him to tell them if a swimsuit looked good. Issei felt overwhelmed, thinking it was like a girls' battle. The three tried on several suits, which made Issei blush. Eventually the three decided on their selections and left with their choices, leaving Issei to pick his own. He found a suit he liked and went home. That evening, Issei was overcome by the day's events and spent the night recovering in bed. The story left open whether he would be well enough to go to the beach for the summer trip. Issei stood by the sea, staring out over the water. He suddenly began to have a nosebleed from the shock of the crowded shoreline and the commotion. Shifuyu scolded him, telling him to stop staring and to do something instead of letting the situation overwhelm him. Issei said he would go for a walk and he left. Shifuyu thought that he still had not gotten used to everything. Issei ran along the beach until he collided with a silver-haired girl. Both of them apologized for the impact, and when he opened his eyes he saw the girl more clearly. The girl asked if he was all right, but Issei fainted from the suddenness of the encounter. When he woke, Issei found himself in a comfortable bed inside a beautiful house. The silver-haired girl stood nearby and said that he had finally woken up. Issei asked who she was and where he was. The girl introduced herself as Rosweiss. Issei gave his name as Issei Hyodo. Rosweiss looked stunned upon hearing his name. Rosweiss explained that their families had once arranged a marriage between them, but they had been separated until now. She said that the arrangement required them to wait until he was of age, and that when she learned his parents had died she promised herself she would find him and care for him. She had tracked him down on the beach where she had seen him running. Issei asked how long he had been unconscious. Rosweiss replied that he had been out for more than 3 days. Realizing his friends had already left and that he needed to get to the academy, Issei remembered that he was a student at the IS Academy. Rosweiss offered to drive him there in her car. After a brief, respectful exchange to acknowledge the situation, they set off. They traveled at high speed in Rosweiss' Lamborghini for 2 days and eventually reached the IS Academy. As they arrived, Shifuyu appeared nearby with a dark, intense aura and called Issei's name. The mood tightened, and the scene left questions about what would happen next. Makus walked through a museum that celebrated notable fanfiction writers and noticed a young boy sitting alone, looking depressed. Makus approached and asked if the boy was all right. The boy said he felt sad because he believed he would never be like the writers on the mural. Makus invited the boy to walk with him. They entered a hall filled with writers, and the boy pointed to a painting on the wall, asking who those writers were and who the central author was. Makus explained that the room honored many writers, some well-known and others not, and then began to tell the boy his own story. Makus narrated that he had started as a reader on Wattpad. A mentor later helped him, and his first work did not bring immediate success. He expected a large following but initially received few votes or comments. On the verge of giving up and deleting his story, he noticed his first follower, who turned out to be a talented writer. After revising his work, it gradually found an audience and became successful. Over time he wrote more books and gained followers slowly but steadily. When he reached a milestone, he discovered a community of writers and met one who became a close friend and supporter. They and others collaborated on projects, and although some came and went, the support network grew. Makus told the boy that what mattered most was writing from the heart and enjoying the process. If he did that, his stories would improve. The boy asked how Makus could be so sure, and Makus revealed that he was the writer behind the name the boy had admired. Surprised, the boy listened as Makus explained that he had reached a new milestone and wanted to celebrate. Makus invited the boy to a stadium where many readers and fellow writers had gathered. In the stadium, Makus thanked everyone who had supported him and acknowledged the writers who had helped him along the way. The celebration felt hopeful, and the boy left with a renewed sense that he could pursue his own path as a writer. Shifuyu demanded to know where Issei had been. Issei explained that he had a problem and had to go home. Rosweiss pointed out that Issei had not been at her house. Issei insisted that he had been at Rosweiss' place and tried to explain. Shifuyu teased that he had been in a girl's house. Issei began to reply that he could explain, but then Shifuyu produced a sword and declared that she would show no mercy. Issei urged Rosweiss to get out of there quickly and told her to step on the gas. Rosweiss floored the accelerator, but Shifuyu split the car down the middle with a swift strike. Rosweiss, upset that it had been her favorite car, drew her own sword and charged at Shifuyu. Rosweiss shouted that Issei would pay for it, then attacked. The two clashed with ringing steel, their blades met again and again in a fast, anime-style duel, neither clearly gaining the upper hand. Nearby, their brown-haired comrade Issei watched the fight. He ran up a slope to put distance between himself and the combatants, and when he grew tired he climbed into a tree to rest for a moment. Issei hoped Rosweiss would be all right. He worried briefly about the possible consequences depending on who won and then shook his head to clear his thoughts. A black-haired girl with striking purple eyes suddenly appeared above him and asked why he looked so frightened. She studied him closely, then produced an old photograph and stared in astonishment. The girl asked his name, and Issei responded that his name was Hayuda Issei. She remained silent for a moment, then announced that she had been searching for him and had finally found him. She embraced him gently, calling him darling, and said that their parents had arranged an engagement. Issei reacted with confusion, asking what she meant and how he could be engaged to her when he did not even know her name. The girl introduced herself as Akino Himejima and stated that she was his fiancée, adding that her sister was involved in the arrangement as well. Issei struggled to understand the situation and to learn who Akino's sister might be. The revelation left him stunned as events raced toward an uncertain next chapter. Akino presented her sister to the group. Issei Haidu suffered a sudden nosebleed when he saw her. Issei asked if the young woman was Akino's sister. Kurumi Himejima introduced herself and greeted him politely. Issei returned the introduction and expressed that it was a pleasure to meet her. They exchanged pleasantries for a moment, but the moment was quickly interrupted. Shifuyu stepped forward and demanded that Issei reveal who all of his fiancés were. Akino and Kurumi moved to stand between them and the others. Kurumi remarked that things might get interesting, and Akino said she did not want to fight today because she had paperwork to handle first. At that moment, the rest of Issei's fiancés arrived. Rosweiss said she wanted to know how many fiancés her darling actually had. Tabane insisted that Issei was her fiancé and future husband. The women began arguing over Issei's future while he tried to back away. Realizing he was surrounded, Issei started to run to get away. Issei fled through the school grounds and out into the streets to avoid being chased. He wondered aloud why his parents had arranged so many engagements for him and feared what the other girls might do if another fiancé appeared. Shifuyu wondered how many fiancés there actually were. Akino counted and said that, including themselves, there were 6 so far. Rosweiss suspected there might be even more fiancés. Kurumi warned everyone to stay alert and announced that the first round of swimsuit contests would begin. Issei fretted that if another fiancé showed up, the other girls would be furious. Then a red-haired girl appeared, looking at him with sharp, striking eyes. The girl declared that she had found her fiancé. Issei muttered that now there was a demon as well. The red-haired girl observed that he seemed troubled. Issei made a nervous, sarcastic remark about needing a doctor if things kept escalating. The girl said she was the first and that nobody owed him anything. She asked Issei to invite her for coffee, promising to reveal who she was if he obliged. Issei agreed. They went to a cafe and ordered food and dessert. After the meal, the red-haired woman revealed that she was Rias Gremery and that she was Issei's fiancée. She also said that Issei's parents had told her who his other fiancés were. Issei was stunned by the revelation. Issei asked how many fiancés he had, and Rias confirmed that she had a list of names and the circumstances of each engagement. Issei felt a little nervous because he did not know how many fiancés he had or how the engagements had come to be. He said he was ready and promised he would not back down. Rias asked if he was sure, and he affirmed his resolve. Rias handed him papers with the names. When Issei saw the list, he was stunned and almost had a heart attack. He asked why there were so many fiancés. Rias explained that there were 20 in total. Issei reacted with disbelief, and Rias began to go through the list, explaining who they were and how each engagement had occurred. Rias said she was the first, and that the engagement had originated from a bet. It had been a food challenge between his father and her father. Issei's father had lost, and Rias's father had promised that Issei would be engaged to Rias when he reached adulthood, an agreement Issei's father accepted. Next were the Himejima sisters, Akino Himejima and Kurumi Himejima. Rias explained that those engagements were the result of Issei's father acting heroically. Shifuyu Onimura was named next. Rias said Shifuyu had asked for Issei's hand in return for rescuing him. The following entry was one of the Tatanashi sisters. Rias explained that Issei's parents had arranged that engagement because they had been childhood friends. Rias then mentioned Historia, saying Issei had become engaged to her through a promise. When Rias named Mikasa Ackerman, Issei made a joking comment that caused Rias to playfully smack him and correct his misunderstanding. She clarified that it was a name, not what he had thought. Shinono Tabane, known by a rabbit nickname, was next. Issei could not recall the details of how that engagement had occurred. Shinono Hookie, who shared the same family name, followed. Rias had no record of how that engagement had happened either. Cecilia Alcott and Gotanda followed, with both engagements tied to royal connections and formal arrangements. Issei admitted he did not understand how he had become involved with royalty, and Rias shrugged. Laura was listed next. Issei noted the addition of another demon to the list. Rin and Charlotte Dunoyer came after. Issei recalled that Charlotte had been very kind for two clear reasons, though the specifics were not important now. Madoka Onimura was identified as Ichika's twin, and Rosweiss was another name that surprised Issei, who had not expected someone like her among his fiancés. Sasha Brous, known for her culinary antics, was listed as well. Rias then mentioned the Takamiya twins, and finally Himari Himono. As they finished reviewing the list, Issei suggested they eat somewhere else, and Rias agreed. They went to another restaurant. Two names remained missing from the list. The question of who the last two fiancés might be was left unresolved. End of chapter. After they left the first restaurant, Issei and Rias went to the park to continue talking about Issei's fiancés. Issei asked which two remained, and Rias answered that the last two were Mamin and Nezuko. Issei acknowledged this quietly. Rias suggested that since they were in the park, Issei should take her on a date like he did with his first girlfriend. Issei blushed, surprised that such a beautiful girl would want to go out with him, but he agreed. They decided to start with the cinema. They bought 2 tickets and watched Demon Slayer, Mugen Train, then the final part of Attack on Titan. When the screenings ended, both of them felt heavy with emotion. Issei wondered aloud about something he had mentioned earlier, and Rias said she would do something to give him a memory he would never forget. When he asked what it would be, she only smiled and called it a surprise. Later, Rias spotted a clothing shop and, with a mischievous expression, suggested they go in. Issei turned bright red but followed her. Inside, Rias picked out daring outfits while Issei grew increasingly flustered in a very anime-like way. After they paid, Rias asked him a serious question about the future. Issei answered that he would marry her someday and that his feelings for her were what mattered most. He reassured her of his devotion. Rias blushed deeply at his words. She pulled Issei into a close, heartfelt embrace and they shared an emotional moment together. They then went to a nearby hotel to rest and continue their private conversation. Later they left quietly, having spent the evening together. The chapter closed on the gentle note of their promise to one another, leaving Issei and Rias both hopeful about what the future might bring. After the incident, Issei spent 3 days and 4 nights recovering at home. He felt diminished and reluctant to leave, so he visited a doctor. The doctor examined him, asked a nurse for a wheelchair, and delivered a somewhat odd, light-hearted diagnosis about a psychosomatic condition that had made him withdraw from the world. The doctor also suggested that Issei's friend might be too frightened to come outside, though he could not fully explain what was happening. Issei thanked the doctor, accepted the wheelchair, and returned home. He took a bath and quietly wept in the bathroom, feeling as if his friend had disappeared and worrying about how he would manage his relationships with the many women who cared for him, especially Shifuyu, who had strong feelings for him. For a week he stayed in his room more than usual, confined to the wheelchair and thinking about how his recovery would affect those commitments. He resigned himself to needing the wheelchair for several weeks and fretted about the future. Shifuyu soon arrived, intent on not letting him avoid her. She declared that she wanted to marry him and hoped to start a family with him before making commitments to the others, mentioning that Rias had told her about his many engagements. Issei explained that he preferred to wait until he had recovered and did not want to lose what was most precious to him. He worried about how he could care for so many in his current state. Shifuyu reassured him that she would not harm him and that she intended to help him get better. Shifuyu then tended to Issei and helped him rest, ensuring he was comfortable as he recovered. A brief quiet settled over them as they adjusted their plans. Issei wondered how he would find and reconcile with all his fiancées as he moved forward with his recovery. Chapter 1. Issei moved quietly so as not to wake Shifuyu, then hurried back to his room, relieved to have escaped. He breathed a sigh of relief at being alone. Some time later, Issei awoke in an unfamiliar place, dressed in a white suit and with his wrists restrained. He felt disoriented and could not remember how he had arrived. A blue-haired woman approached and introduced herself as Tatanashi Sarashiki, claiming to be his wife. Tatanashi explained that they had married and spent their honeymoon in Paris, and she played a DVD that showed their wedding and the scenes of their trip. Issei watched, surprised but slowly accepting that the events had occurred. He reflected that their honeymoon had looked beautiful. Issei confronted Tatanashi about waking up after 2 weeks and asked whether he had been drugged. Tatanashi admitted that he had been unconscious for 2 weeks and insisted it had not been her intention. Issei reacted with anger and demanded answers. Tatanashi tried to calm him, expressing her devotion and promising to remain by his side through wealth or poverty. She reached for his hand in a gentle, reassuring gesture. Their private moment was interrupted by a red-haired woman, Rias, who appeared and announced that Issei would face a punishment. Tension rose as Issei braced himself for what would come next. To be continued. Chapter 2. After the events with Tatanashi, Issei woke up in his bed planning the ceremonies for his many fiancées, intending to make the weddings grand. As he prepared to rest, an explosive impact shattered the wall of his room. Issei was startled as debris flew and several uniformed soldiers entered the area. A soldier identified Issei by name and ordered him to surrender. Issei refused, but a soldier produced a device that delivered a powerful electric shock and rendered him unconscious. When Issei came to, he found himself in a phantom task facility. Diane, a figure he recognized, stood over him and announced that he would now be expected to work for their organization. Issei refused, insisting that he would not take orders from her and that he could leave whenever he wished. Diane attempted to intimidate him with a weapon, but Issei resisted. He managed to knock Diane aside, escape to his IS armor, and activate it. The armor burst into action. Issei fought his way through waves of soldiers in a fast-paced, anime-style battle, disabling their weapons and forcing them to fall back. Diane confronted him again, revealing that bombs had been planted at his academy and warning that everything he cared about would be destroyed if he did not surrender. Issei refused to give in. Diane pressed a detonator, and Issei watched in horror as explosions tore through the academy, sending shockwaves across the campus. He felt a surge of anger and a burning determination for revenge. At that moment, a familiar voice came from his armor. Drake spoke, declaring that they would make those responsible pay for their actions. End of chapter. An unseen voice proclaimed that it would awaken as the celestial dragon that stole the principles of domination from the gods, that it would scoff at the infinite and disdain dreams, and that it would become the red dragon of domination and drag its foes into the depths of a crimson purgatory as the Juggernaut drive began. Thus the battle began. Diane tried to escape but could not because Issei seized her and threw her aside. He then restrained her with a sudden, icy energy and followed with a powerful Longinus strike that overwhelmed Diane. The others watched in horror and wondered who would bring Issei back to himself. A short, tense silence followed as they prepared for the next move. At the former IS Academy, Shifuyu expressed relief that their defensive shield had held, noting that without it they might all have been blown apart. Hookie questioned who could have fired the attack. Shifuyu answered that someone had apparently planted explosives. Hookie asked how she could be sure it had been bombs. Shifuyu explained that the destruction they had seen was too great for bullets. Only an explosive could have caused it. Hookie then asked where Issei was. They searched frantically until they realized Issei had become a giant dragon-like form, and all of them were terrified. Shifuyu reacted with stunned disbelief and Hookie admitted that she did not know how it had happened but observed that Issei's armor had evolved into something else. Charlotte wondered how they could return him to normal and whether there was any time limit. Tatanashi suggested that it might be possible but that Issei appeared to be in a passive mode, not consciously controlling his actions. Shifuyu concluded that they had to bring him back to the light of his memories so he could remember and regain control. All of Issei's fiancés moved into action, though Issei continued to assault the area with powerful beams and sonic cannonball attacks. Shifuyu warned that his beams were very strong and urged everyone to give their maximum effort. They all rushed forward to try to reach him. Inside Issei's dream, he found himself waking in a bed in a place he knew well, his childhood home. He wondered where he was and puzzled over the memory of fighting Diane while wearing his armor, unsure if it had been a dream. He changed clothes and went down to the main room, where his parents, Goru and Aiko, greeted him warmly and told him breakfast was ready. During breakfast, Issei asked his mother a question. Aiko listened patiently and offered 2 pieces of advice. First, she encouraged him to keep his heart strong and focused when he faced difficult situations or lost control in battle, because holding true to his feelings would help him regain command. Second, she reassured him that, even if they could not always be by his side, his parents would always be with him in spirit and in his heart. Issei promised to remember and to always fight with his heart. Back at the battlefield, Rias pleaded for Issei to listen, begging him not to lose control and urging him to come back to them, but he did not respond. The situation held on a knife's edge as the others pushed forward to try to recover Issei and bring him back to himself. Rias pleaded with Issei, saying she knew he loved her and the others and begging him to come back to them. Issei did not respond. He unleashed a powerful, draconic roar and struck out, sending Rias flying. She was seriously hurt and fell unconscious. Rias worried aloud about how to restore Issei to his normal self. Shifuyu admitted that he did not know. The situation was complicated even for him. Tabane agreed and warned that, even if they could intervene, Issei would continue tapping into that power until it endangered his life. Hookie asked if their only option was to wait. Charlotte agreed that there was nothing they could do at the moment. Suddenly, a set of 3-dimensional weapons and a strange suit appeared, and someone moved up to the dragon's head. Mikasa reached the dragon's head and urged Issei to wake up, explaining that he was trapped in a trance and that what she was about to do might hurt. Using a device, she administered a precise jolt to the dragon's head to break the trance. Inside Issei's dream, everything was washed in white. A blinding light filled his vision and left everything indistinct. The dream faded. Issei's dragon form subsided and he saw Mikasa crying beside him. Issei called for Mikasa. Mikasa welcomed him back and demanded to know what he had been doing and why he felt so strange, while insisting they needed to get to a safer place. She picked him up and carried him to a secure spot where they could talk privately, while the other fiancés watched them leave. Shifuyu asked who the girl was and why she called Issei darling. Rias reacted with jealousy, declaring that it had to be Mikasa, her worthy rival, and lamenting that Mikasa had taken that close position with Issei. Hookie, Charlotte, and Tabane each voiced their own claims on Issei's future, and the 4 began to quarrel fiercely over the king and what his future should be. In the park, Mikasa needed to discuss the events that had occurred while Issei had been absent. Mikasa asked what had happened during the time he had not been with her. Issei replied that many things had occurred. He could only remember fragments, but he promised he would always remember Mikasa Ackerman. Mikasa was moved and surprised that he still remembered her and still used the affectionate name that mattered to her. She hugged Issei tightly and cried for several minutes. Issei then asked Mikasa what she had been doing while he was gone. Mikasa explained that she had trained relentlessly, learning to fight and growing stronger so she could protect him. She had prepared herself to be by his side and to commit to him. Issei noted that Mikasa always got straight to the point and expressed hope that their wedding would be a lovely day. They shared a quiet moment of relief and hope for the future. A short time later, as Issei began to speak about his plans to go somewhere, several missiles suddenly struck the city. Buildings and homes were devastated, and civilians fled in a scene of chaos. Issei protested that the people had done nothing to deserve this and asked why it was happening. Mikasa agreed that the civilians were innocent and warned that their attackers would not stop until they had him. Issei resolved that he would fight to survive and to protect what remained of their lives, especially Mikasa. Mikasa mentioned that she had brought Nezuko to help. Nezuko arrived and affirmed that she had come to assist and to help end the conflict with Phantom Rax. Issei observed that they had many allies and suggested they needed to build something powerful, a device that could replicate and produce multiple units capable of firing to counter the enemy. At that moment, Himari appeared and offered assistance. Himari identified herself as a cat demon and urged everyone to begin immediately, saying that all of them together could defeat this powerful foe. Issei agreed, and they set about preparing their plan. Mikasa reported that she had repaired the radio. Gunfire and explosions began to echo across the city in Japan while the other girls watched the battle unfold. Hookie asked what they should do. Tabane examined the battle bus they had seen and noted that it appeared to be a bus fitted with highly advanced technology and powerful weapons that made it resemble an armored infinite Stratos unit. Shifuyu suggested they build a similar bus to fight with. All of them agreed, and they prepared to construct their own battle bus. On the battlefield, Issei readied the blaster dragon cannon. Their brown-haired protagonist braced for a powerful attack. The outcome of the war remained to be decided on the battlefield. After Issei activated the Juggernaut drive and the girls took their places in the battle bus they had created, their protagonist was ready for combat. Inside the Red Emperor armor, Issei transformed and released a thunderous roar. From beneath the rubble, Issei called for Shifuyu. Diane admitted she had not expected that and froze for a moment when she saw Issei in his dragon form, briefly thinking it might be one of the celestial dragons. She resolved to fight at full strength, growing in size and summoning a massive hammer to gain an advantage. The clash began. Diane and Issei struck at the same time, creating a huge cloud of dust. Their fists met, and they sprang apart to launch another attack. Diane unleashed a devastating technique called Infinite Destruction, testing Issei's defenses. Issei then revealed an ace up his sleeve, channeling a powerful divine technique through his dragon form. The exchange intensified, each side pushing their limits in a swift, anime-style duel. The outcome hung in the balance as the combatants continued to press forward. But that power belonged to the White Emperor Dragon. Diane did not care. She would use it. She swung her hammer and struck the armor with all her strength. The armor cracked, and Diane allowed herself a moment of relief. She believed she had won. Issei answered with a surprise counterattack and prepared what he called his final strike. He moved with agility using the three-dimensional maneuver gear that Mikasa had given him. In a swift, precise series of blows, Issei cut through the remaining armor and disarmed Diane, leaving her gravely injured on the battlefield. The action was fast and stylized, like something from an intense anime fight, without any graphic detail. A flashback showed Issei asking Mikasa for the maneuver gear because he believed he had discovered who was behind his memory loss and his kidnapping. Mikasa agreed with a warning to be careful, and she handed him the equipment. That was how he had prepared his decisive move. Back in the present, after the clash, Issei released the weapon he had used to restrain Diane so she could speak. Diane, injured and shaking, begged for mercy and declared that everything she had done had been for his protection. She revealed that she had erased his memories because she did not want him to be hurt, and that she owed a dangerous debt to the Chiron clan, a group that wanted Issei dead. Issei pressed for details and learned that Diane had been forced into impossible choices by that clan. She explained that she loved him and that her actions had been motivated by a desperate attempt to keep him safe. She begged to go with him instead of being handed over to her pursuers. Overcome with emotion, Diane reached out to him in a tearful, heartfelt embrace rather than a romantic gesture, and Issei carried her away to get her to safety. Issei ran with all his strength and found the others waiting in a battle bus. Shifuyu had opened the doors and called for him to board. Issei leaped into the vehicle, surprised at how such a thing had been arranged so quickly. Shifuyu asked later how Diane had come to be there, and Issei promised to explain in time. The group moved to a safer location where their enemies could not find them easily. After they arrived at the temporary refuge, the group hid in a secure place out of sight of their pursuers. Diane prepared to tell the full truth about what had happened to Issei's family. She began to explain that after she erased his memory, he had been taken to a hospital to recover while she suffered under the Chiron clan. Another flashback showed Diane's life 5 years earlier. After she had erased Issei's memories, she had returned to face a clan that wanted him dead. The Chiron patriarch berated her for failing to eliminate him and treated Diane and her family harshly. The family endured abuse, deprivation, and humiliation, and when Diane's mother slipped into delirium near death, she made Diane promise to find her son and help him defeat the Chiron clan. Soon afterward, the Chiron guards burst in. Diane's mother urged her to flee and to give Issei a chance at a better life. Diane escaped with her younger sister and traveled to England, leaving the girl in an orphanage to protect her. Diane was pursued, traveling the world to avoid capture, and eventually went to Japan where she joined the Chiron from the inside long enough to make the clan believe she supported them. That was why she had been forced to fight Issei, to maintain her cover and keep her sister safe. Back in the present, Diane finished her confession. Issei resolved that they had to find his sister before the Chiron clan could. Diane admitted she did not know where the sister had gone. When she had checked the orphanage, the girl had already escaped at 12 years old. Issei declared that they would search for her and train her as needed to stand against the clan. Shifuyu expressed skepticism, asking how they could trust Diane's words. Diane acknowledged the doubt. Issei explained that he had used a method to ensure Diane would tell the truth, so they could proceed believing her confession. Diane accepted that she would join Issei's group in the search, and everyone agreed to find his sister before the Chiron did. The group prepared for the mission. They would track down Issei's sister and confront the threat of the Chiron clan, determined to uncover the full truth of Issei's past and protect those they cared about. End of chapter. Issei pulled out a blueprint for a powerful device, and all the fiancés of the brown-haired man gathered every possible material. With everything assembled, they began building a super-advanced battle bus with cutting-edge technology. Issei declared that it was time, and Mikasa agreed. Issei activated the battle bus and they sped off at full throttle toward the fight as explosions and gunfire filled the air. When they reached the ramp, the bus switched to flight mode, was duplicated, and many identical battle buses took to the sky. Issei warned Diane that the battle was beginning and reminded her not to kill people for sport. Diane accepted the challenge and urged Issei forward. Issei launched himself into the fray while the radio played AC/DC's Demon Fire. Unknown Temple. Mikus 7625E asked Phoenix Ackerman what they were doing there. Phoenix Ackerman explained that they were there so the student and teacher could talk and measure how much Mikus had improved. Phoenix Ackerman praised the 12 books Mikus had produced and encouraged more writing, more openness with followers, and meeting other writers to continue growing. Mikus 7625E acknowledged the advice. Phoenix Ackerman hinted at something else but held it back and proposed a friendly battle instead. Mikus 7625E accepted and warned that there would be no mercy just because Phoenix was an Ackerman and a woman. The friendly duel began. Mikus unleashed a lightning strike, and Phoenix conjured a crystal wall to block it. From a table outside the arena, Red Wind announced that Phoenix had stopped the attack and introduced himself as the commentator, inviting everyone to watch what Mikus would do next. In the arena, Mikus admitted that Phoenix seemed stronger and decided to give his maximum effort. Mikus activated a hidden power called Zafkiel. Phoenix Ackerman expressed surprise that Mikus had the power of a spirit and noted that he had been experimented on and had other hidden abilities. Mikus declared that he would now defeat Phoenix with an attack named Extinction Sprint. Phoenix countered by preparing an even stronger move. As the battlefield began to tremble, Phoenix released a galaxy explosion and their powers collided in a spectacular, anime-style clash. Both warriors fell back at the same time, and Red Wind declared it a draw. Phoenix acknowledged the tie and suggested they end the duel, but then someone else arrived. Lloyd shouted and unleashed a powerful shockwave. Both Phoenix and Mikus reacted in surprise as numerous colossal titans appeared on the field. Lloyd announced his intent to destroy them both, and Mikus and Phoenix prepared to oppose him. They moved to confront Lloyd and the towering titans, engaging in fast-paced, non-graphic battle sequences. This story will continue. After Diane spoke with Issei, everyone set to work building weapons and repairing the battle bus, which had sustained some damage. While the repairs went on, Issei and Diane discussed assembling a team and planning how to infiltrate the Chiron clan to find Issei's missing sibling. The primary mission remained finding his sister. Issei considered the team's needs and explained that they would require someone very stealthy, someone who could fly, a fierce swords fighter who could wield many blades at once, and a capable healer. Diane replied that she could contact several people, though she warned that Issei might not like some of them. When Issei asked who she had in mind, Diane listed Nezuko, Jericho, and Himari as possible recruits. Issei added that he knew someone else who could help but described her as sadistic. Diane reacted with concern and said she would pray, because the situation was likely to become very chaotic. Issei contacted all the women he had to call, and they arrived 2 days later at the Kuo military base in the early afternoon. Issei and Diane waited with a very special package. A woman bound inside the transport protested violently, claiming she had been kidnapped and accusing whoever had taken her of being connected to the Chiron clan. Issei immediately recognized the woman as Natasha and realized she was his sister. Natasha accused Issei of abandoning her in an orphanage and spoke angrily about her hardships. Diane offered an apology. The tension eased when Natasha saw Issei clearly. She embraced him and cried, overwhelmed by the reunion. Diane then laid out the plan for entering the Chiron temple. Natasha explained the approach she had in mind, noting that the entry route was far from pleasant but workable. Issei reassured her that they would proceed no matter how difficult it was. Natasha emphasized the need for a heavily armed, armored vehicle capable of withstanding the clan's defenses and environmental hazards. Issei answered that, fortunately, they already had a fully operational battle bus. The team gathered their gear and prepared to follow Natasha's route. Kurumi arrived with supplies and reassured everyone that they had brought everything possible. A short, light-hearted remark from Kurumi briefly broke the tension before the team refocused on the mission. Akino greeted the others warmly, and Issei checked with her about the status of Rias and Rosweiss. Akino confirmed that they were prepared for Issei's plan, though she could not be certain of success. Mikasa reported that she had brought specialized three-dimensional weapons. With everyone assembled and the bus stocked, they set off. Natasha led the convoy, asking the others to follow Issei's pace to buy time and improve their chances of reaching the temple intact. Another battle bus, piloted by Shifuyu, acknowledged and advanced in formation. The team played an intense chase theme to set the mood as they raced toward the Chiron stronghold. They reached a partially destroyed bridge. Issei pushed the bus to full power and, with synchronized move, launched the vehicle across the broken span. The bus landed safely on the other side, and they arrived at the Chiron temple. Issei stood before the clan's gates and felt the weight of what was to come. The team readied themselves, knowing an epic confrontation awaited that would determine whether they could end the evil deeds of the Chiron clan. The final outcome would be decided in the unfolding battle. Natasha announced that it was time for the plan. Diane agreed to proceed. They gathered everyone and guided the users silently into the rooms. The group searched every corner, but Issei fell through a trapdoor and landed in a secret chamber where the chief of the Chiron clan waited. Dark greeted Issei and welcomed him back. Issei asked why Dark was there. Dark responded that he cared for Issei and then revealed his plan to take control of the world. Dark sprinted toward a strange machine. Issei drew his sword, Stromfire, and struck Dark's arm, disabling him. Dark insisted Issei would not stop him, but with no time to waste he entered the machine. The machine transformed Dark into Galactus, the devourer of worlds, and Galactus proclaimed that the world was his. Issei declared that this would not last and retrieved a radio from his pocket to call for help. In the camp, Rias answered Issei and opened a portal that swallowed Galactus and those nearby. At that moment, the story's readers were enlisted to pilot battle buses. One reader wondered where they were. Issei appeared in his red Emperor Dragon armor and apologized for bringing them into the fight, explaining that they needed help against Galactus and that reality had been altered to create thousands of battle buses designed to act like bombs for Galactus to consume. Issei instructed the readers to use the bus's machine guns to fight off the robots and to get close enough to Galactus to finish the mission. Robots suddenly appeared and began firing. Issei told the drivers he had a reason for sending them into the thick of it and urged them to use the guns to defeat the robots and press forward toward Galactus. The battle for the world had begun. Team Issei versus Team Galactus. The battle buses, driven by the recruited pilots, fired relentlessly to repel the attackers. Some buses were destroyed, but others pushed on. The first driver to reach the front was Maranto Gamer _18. Issei warned everyone they needed to move away from the 0 point. A bus horn sounded, and Issei calmed the pilot, asking Shifuyu to check on a bus that had a problem. Shifuyu appeared at the doorway and reassured the crew, taking control of the battle carriage and steering it back on course. Issei urged the pilot to stay on the path and not lose direction. Issei reported that Galactus was closing in but that he had repaired the radio. He and the team kept firing at all the attacking robots as they advanced. Over the radio, Issei noted the sheer number of robots and asked Diane for assistance. Diane responded by helping a comrade board, and together they neutralized the surrounding robots, clearing the way toward Galactus. As they neared their target, Diane encouraged the others to stay strong. Issei reflected that if everything went according to plan, he would return. If not, they had still fought bravely together. Galactus consumed the remaining battle buses, and for a moment it seemed hopeless. Then Galactus collapsed in a tremendous, non-graphic surge of energy and detonated in a blinding release of power. When the light faded, the threat was over. Issei praised the team for their success. Everyone returned to Earth safe and in good health. The protagonists went on to live their lives with the years ahead of them, and the adventure came to its close as Issei Infinity Stratos reached its end.